Let's match the Neo ventilator with a Hammond C3. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today I thought we'd do a quick one on the Neo ventilator. Now, I have done a video on the Neo ventilator about 6 or 7 years ago, something like that if you check back. And I used to carry a couple with me. In fact, when I first started out, I would have the Leslie Sim, say, on a Hammond XB2 or something like that. I moved up to the Hammond XK3C, and for a while I used a Leslie 21, you know, the top rotor with the emulated bass. Really portable, really good, I have to say. And then, because of miking issues and roadie issues, I moved on to Neo ventilator, and I used that for quite a few years. I even bought two at one point. I had two on the pedal board in case one broke down, because I thought they were that good. If they stopped making them, you wouldn't have a spare. Eventually I moved on to my Leslie 145 maybe 7 or 8 years ago, something like that, and haven't looked back. And I sold the two Neo ventilator Mark 1s that I had. I've now repurchased one, so that's the third one I've owned. And I've done that because of particular gigs that I've got coming my way that would work in that fashion, and that don't really require the authentic organ sound. It's a very tricky one for me to get my head around, isn't it? Because I'm all about the authenticity. But one particular band, small use of organ, big use of synth, so I think I might just be able to get away with that for ease of getting and everything else, ease of mixing and what have you. So I've rebought the Neo ventilator, and what I've never done before is used the ventilator with the Hammond C3, because the connections aren't natively compatible. My wonderful technical assistant has put in a line out onto my 1960 C3 here, and that now gives me the opportunity to do just that. So I thought, let's do a piece of video about how the ventilator works with, well, the beast, the king of the Hammond organs, really. Other opinions are available. So straight away you can see the Neo vent here, and if I were to do the settings, let's say everything up, have a listen to that, shall we? See where we are. Okay, sounds very nice, doesn't it? Made a mistake there, played it twice, you didn't notice, did you? Good. So, the flashing lights here are showing the lower and upper rotor. And you can see the lower one's going a different speed, and when we switch it on to fast, the lower takes a bit more time there to get up to speed, and the top one doesn't, as if, you know, on a normal, real Leslie, and back again. Beautiful. And you have a bypass button here as well, which makes it exactly what it says on the tin. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. So really what you're interested in is the noises, isn't it? I'll talk about the Mark 1 ventilator, which this is. There is a Mark 2, there are some stomp boxes as well. They're based on the same engine, so I'm not particularly fussed about having a Mark 2 or a stomp box. And the Mark 2 will take the parameters further than a real Leslie would go. So I wasn't that fussed about paying the premium for that, because I don't want it to sound unlike a Leslie. I want it to sound just like a Leslie. So this is what this was developed for. Acceleration speed. Right, let me explain that. If we have that down to slow, and we're on the slow rotor, and we're going to go to the fast rotor. Okay, pretty good. If we turn that to extremis, same again. Something not beautiful up there, is there? So I tend to have it just a little bit there. And what I've done is I've tweaked it against my 145 and my 122 to make it sound as natural as I can to me. Acceleration is exactly what it does on the tin. It's how fast the bass, the emulated bass and treble rotors accelerate to their top speed. Up to the top. Reasonably subtle, but you can see the first one, it went straight up to the top speed straight away, and then the second one took a while, and the bass, particularly the bass register, takes a while to slow down. And I do love that whoa, 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 as the treble's already stopped and the bass comes down. Again, I tend to have that about 1 o'clock. The balance reflects the I don't know whether you want to call it microphone balance, or it's the tonal balance between the top and the bottom rotor. And on stock, well, I'll do a sweep. That might be a good way of doing it. Can you hear what it's doing there, right? So it's more than just a tone wheel, because it's moving in and out of the bass. So if we were going fast with it like this, you can really hear that bass rotor accentuated. Not so much the tone, although the tone is there, but the movement. And the same with the treble. And the bass rotor takes a while. With the clones, you're good for 12 o'clock-ish, 1 o'clock-ish. With this particular C, and remembering that they all seem to be slightly different, I'm looking about 2 o'clock there. Drive, I'm going to come back to. Bearing in mind there's no drive on this Hammond. Yes, I have got the ZD1 overdrive down here, but it's all disengaged. Nearly finally is the distance. This is microphone distance. If you've done any recording or you've played live, you'll know that in a room, if there's one mic in a room about 10 foot away from a Leslie, you're going to get quite a sweet, mellow sound. You're not going to have such an exaggerated sound of Rotary motion, new word. You're not gonna feel it. Your virtual trousers aren't gonna be flapping with the wind. But if you have the microphone right up close, you're gonna hear a lot of the acceleration and a lot of that lovely break, that dun 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 break. There's a happy medium, and it depends what you want it for as well. But I'll show them for you. So we're gonna do a rise and fall with the microphone furthest away. That might be the closest, mightn't it? Hang on. Got the description backwards slightly there. So 0 in this is meters distance, microphone right there, and 10 is microphone far away. So you can if I'm a Leslie, I could do a sweep. You see how the rotors are slightly less in your face as it goes higher up. Again, Neo have done this thing. If you put everything at 12 o'clock, you're going to get a really good sound, and that's probably a good place to start and to do little tweaks. I like to hear the break. I think there's emotion in the break, and when we start to get onto the overdrive section, I think it comes out a bit more. So I'm, as you can see, about 11 o'clock. Right, my favourite topic now, overdrive. I can get a lot more out of this, and it's around pushing the volume pedal, because the organ puts out far more power than this little fella is prepared to accept, and then you get this little overload light on and all kinds of badness happens. But progressively the overdrive will go up the greater the input, as well as the greater that knob there. you hear how as the microphone, if you've got the distance down to 0, as the rotor comes close to the mic, the decibel increases higher, and therefore the overdrive is accentuated more. Feel it, it's actually clipping a bit there because it's just so high. Let's take that down, bring that down. I'll just drop that down a little bit, I think, so that we don't get clippage. Pretty nice, isn't it? Tell you what it does well, and it's hard for me to explain, that reedy characteristic between the organ and the Leslie. I didn't have it with my 145, don't have it as much with the 145, and I didn't have it with the 122. And then I changed the power output valves to the KT88s, and it really started to accentuate that reediness, and that's quite nice on the rise. Do you know what I mean? Can you hear that? Okay, on the back, which you won't be able to see from this camera, but on the back there is a key git button. That's not the keyboard player, is a git. That means if your input is a guitar or a keyboard. So if it's a guitar and it's going into a guitar amp and cab, it will switch off the simulation, the Leslie cab simulation. Obviously I've got it to key for that reason. You have a remote button, which I'm not using at the moment. Standard, so the CU1 is it, the Hammond Suzuki Half Moon works perfectly well with it. It's a stereo signal, I think any kind of stereo button. I'd have to look into the latching, but generally speaking will work for that. So that's your fast slow rotor. This will also do stop. You can't do stop without the Half Moon. There's no stop button on here, there's only bypass. And what bypass does, it takes out the emulation and it takes out the overdrive, as well as stopping the rotors or making it bypassed. So it's not really what you want. So the only way you can get those lights there to stop entirely is with the middle selection on a Hammond Suzuki CU1 Half Moon, or maybe another 3-position stereo switch, right? You know. Then you've got a pair of output, stereo output. Okay, yeah, stereo output, that's great, probably good for recording, I guess. Live work, I mean recording, I'd use a Leslie if you can. Obviously, live work, no one's really cared about stereo at that volume, I don't think. Well, maybe I'm wrong there, let me know. And an input, and you've also got a level input as well, a high or low, which is really interesting. I don't know if it's pitched at guitar being less than normal synth, but I think they tend to be matched at around -20 dB anyway. But I do find it useful for the C, which is really high. I can put the higher input in, and don't forget, if you're going too high, the overload light comes on, and the manual says, danger, Will Robinson, don't do that too much or you will break it. Other things to know about this, the Mark 1 did have a power supply issue, which is not very well known. And if you get a weird humming noise, high-pitched humming noise all the time through the PA, you'll be able to track it down to the power supply. And I believe, certainly the one I had all those years ago, the make of power supply was Sunny, S-U-N-N-Y. And I spoke to Neo at the time, and they just sent me out a free one. No problem at all. Here you go, here's another power supply, and it's been fine ever since. I don't know if non-standard power supplies work fine or not. I'm not sure of the vintage of the power supply that I've got on here. If I'm honest, it's been a while since I've compared 2 or 3 ventilators together. Other than that, I think it's a fabulous tool. I want to look more at emulation as well in other videos. So I've got another video coming up which I'll do a little bit of work on emulation with VST and plugins and what have you, which I think you'll find interesting, certainly from the recording side and from clone wheel side as well. So that's the Neo Ventilator Mark 1 as it is in a nutshell. I think the Mark 2 is similar. The foot pedals are similar too, although adjusting the parameters are more about clicking buttons under the hood, I think, rather than having the sweepable pots. But the Mark II is significantly more expensive, and these, if you get on your auction sniper and sit around on eBay, certainly in England, you could pick them up for about 170, 180 pounds, whereas a new one I've seen for 440, 450. So it's a good thing to have in your kit bag, especially if you've got vintage Leslies as well. My 145 and my 122, pretty reliable. I do service them often. The 3300 is so far bulletproof, so I wouldn't worry about that. But having one of those in your bag is not the worst thing in the world, especially when you get to venues where the engineer doesn't know how to mic a Leslie up. And you then can consider having this for out front and the Leslie for on stage. A little bit of trickery you need to do with your half moon wiring, which I should be able to find out and show you some links to, which I've seen before, which allows your half moon to split and speed up and slow down the ventilator that goes to front of house, and then speed up and slow down your Leslie 3300, which is behind you, making you feel all great. And the difference, the audience really can't tell the difference, I would say, unless it's a particularly knowing crowd, but you can, and it's really important, I feel, that your sound is good. The better I hear the notes coming out of my fingers and the organ, the better I play, the more chances I take. If my monitoring is poor, or let's face it, sometimes non-existent, then I'm going to be very, very safe, because the only thing you hear are the wrong notes. Right. Okay, so in a nutshell, the Neo Ventilator Mark 1 with the Hammond organ. I'll leave you with a little bit of playing so we can hear how some of the different drawbar settings work, and the percussion and bits and bobs. How does that sound? See you next time, guys.